What's up, Pharaoh fam? Welcome back to the Pharaoh Show. So, today's going to be a little different. We've been sitting with our 23&Me results for a little bit, and we're finally ready to talk about them. And I already know I'm going to hear something about y'all talking about my pie chart, okay? Anybody that knows me knows I love a good pie chart. So, if you don't like it, scram. Skip forward in this video and go watch Gabby's, because I'm sure she's doing something extra. Because y'all know she's the fairest of us all. Now, for my stuff. Some of the stuff I am still processing. Some of it surprised me, and some of it I'm simply just not ready to talk about yet. But we'll get to that. Now let's get started. So, the biggest piece of who I am, 31.6%, comes back British and Irish. And look, if you know anything about Black American history, this part isn't really shocking. A lot of us have European ancestry, and it doesn't exactly come from a happy place. The British were heavily involved in the slave trade, like one of the biggest players in it. So that DNA being in my bloodline tells its own story without me really having to say much. The Irish piece is interesting though. Irish immigrants and Black Americans actually had this really complicated shared history early on in this country, both kind of pushed to the margins. I did not know a lot about that before this, so that part was pretty eye opening for me. So I will be looking more into that. Second, Western European at 28.2%. So French, German, that whole region. And again, Western Europe was really the money behind a lot of what happened during the slave trade. The French had a massive presence in the Caribbean and down in Louisiana. So when I see this number, I'm not exactly celebrating it, but I do think about how my ancestors survived a lot of that and still passed something down that does mean something to me. And there is still a part of it, of my German heritage, that does sit very near and dear to my heart, considering I've heard many stories from my grandmother who have told the stories of her father, and that piece is very important to me. One of the parts that was not very shocking is West African. This piece is 25.9% of who I am. And before I got the results, I really did not know much about West African history, especially as much as I probably should have. But doing a little digging, West Africa was home to some serious civilizations: the Mali Empire, the Ashanti, the Kingdom of Dahomey. These were real, powerful, complex societies, not what a lot of us were taught in school. And knowing that my roots do trace back there, that's something I'm still sitting with. There's a lot more I want to learn before I really speak on it, but I want to at least acknowledge it because it does deserve that. Now, there are a couple pieces in these results that I'm not going to get into today, not because I'm hiding anything, but because I'm still learning. Some of this history is kind of heavy for me. Some of it is kind of complicated, and I want to actually understand it before I put it out there. When I feel like I can speak on it the right way, you'll hear about it, I promise. What I will say is this: there's 4% indigenous ancestry in here, and that one caught me a little bit off guard. But apparently, it's not that uncommon for Black Americans to have indigenous ancestry when you think about the history. Native and African people shared a lot of the same struggles on this land. There was intermarriage, there were tribes that sheltered people from escaping slavery. It's a part of American history that doesn't get talked about enough, and honestly, it's one I really want to learn more about. So, yeah, those are the overall broad strokes of where I come from. And I will be honest, putting this together has made me realize how much I don't know about my own history and how much I want to know.
Hey, motherfucker. Hey, hi, how you doing? It's me. I have returned. And so have our DNA results. That took forever. But anyway, they are back. Thank you so much for joining me on a How It's Made, a Feral Creative. And I look forward to sharing some very exclusive behind the genes content with you all today. Let's get into it. All right. So 23andMe groups DNA into a few main ancestry categories as such, and then breaks those down into more specific regions and populations. So mine actually were pretty dang accurate. Not a whole lot of surprise here if you watched our last video. And I will link it below and on the screen here somewhere so you can check that out if you haven't. I am very, very, very Bolivian and South American because of my family in the past few generations. So that first chunk being the largest makes a whole lot of sense. And then for European, also not a huge surprise, except Ashkenazi Jew, which I had no idea. Actually, a fun little bit I like to do is a very close friend of mine is Ashkenazi Jew. And I like to tell people that I'm Jewish because I'm Jewish adjacent because, I'm like, oh, my best friend's Jewish and we make challah together. But now it feels a little less appropriaty. Hey, I am Jewish. Suck it, mom. Sorry, I don't know. Western Asian and North African made sense too. It gets into even further subcategories, but we would be here forever. But like we mentioned the last one, Lebanese, Moroccan, all that did show up. So really great. It is a little bit smaller. According to my 23andMe, it was further back generation wise. So obviously there's a little bit less. And then trace ancestry refers to small, low confidence percentages, usually less than 1 to 2% of the DNA in genetic reports, just overall. So usually it's pointed to distant ancestors, often 5 to 20 generations back. So it usually doesn't end up having significant enough findings to be in a category of its own or to be included in the other categories. So that is that. These ingredients do convert to grams. So if you have a scale and a little bit of this laying around at home, go ahead and mix that up, make you a me. I'd love to see how that turned out. So if you make me, go ahead and tag me in the comments, post a picture, let me know how it came out. How many fingers do you have left? I am feral. I do bite. I hope you have insurance. And now for an exclusive behind the jeans look at some fun stuff about me. So this is a very, very minimal overview about everything it gives you. 23andMe really is so in depth with all kinds of traits, historical matches, rebuilding your DNA stuff. Like it's crazy. So if you want more information, just go to 23andme.com and they will explain it better than I can. But here are a few things that I wanted to share. So, for example, I found it interesting that it says 55% chance that I've never had dandruff. I actually am dandruff. I have seborrheic dermatitis. I have seborrheic dermatitis. I couldn't even say that. Psoriasis, eczema, all of the itchies, all of the dry flakiness. So I thought that was interesting. And then it also says I have an 81% chance of having stretch marks. Ding, ding, ding. Yes, I am all stretch marked out. I could not stretch more. 26.3% chance of having flat feet. Accurate. And another fun fact I didn't realize was part of the testing is Neanderthal ancestry. So I actually have a little less than 2% Neanderthal DNA, which was pretty cool. Compared to other customers, I have about 74% more. So that's on caveman. Let me know if you're looking for insurance. I do have the hookup. And then for historical matches, I had 18 total. I won't get into every detail of them, but some of the cool stuff I found was my oldest ancestor was traced back to an imperial period Roman. And another really cool find, especially for me, if you know me, you know I'm a little bit woo-woo, was that I had a Iron Age Durotrigine Celt female in my ancestry, which was really, really cool because after doing a little bit of research, I learned that this was a matrilocal social structured community, which basically means the women were her, like they were the girls. It was all about structuring the community around them. The network of support was all about the women. Two-thirds of the individuals in that community shared a single maternal ancestor. There's also evidence that supports that the Roman historical accounts of Celtic women's empowerment that were previously dismissed as exaggerations were actually very true. So neat. And then 5 Mayan sacrifice victims, which was crazy to find out. If you grew up Latina like me and people are like, "Oh, what are you, Mexican, Puerto Rican?" And you're like, "No, there's nothing wrong with those backgrounds. They're beautiful, beautiful cultures." But I was very proudly Bolivian. I'd be like, "No, I'm Bolivian. God." And it's so funny. Turns out, yeah, I am just a teensy bit Mexican, Mayan to be Pacific. And even cooler, those 5 Mayan sacrifice victims that my DNA traced back, We're actually buried at Chichen Itza, which we were at just a few months ago. It's crazy. So I thought that was really, really cool. We did the test right before leaving to Mexico, and turns out I just visited some of my family members. Like that's crazy. And I just thought that was so cool. And I felt such a connection, which I thought was just from being Latina and having such a big indigenous background from being Bolivian. And it turns out I felt connected because I am. So that was really, really special to me. I also had four ceramic age Caribbean individual ancestors between Dominican Republic and the Bahamas, which I thought was pretty neat. I would have never expected to see that, but with migration and colonization and all that, it kind of makes sense where that would come from, especially since if you know a little bit of history, we all kind of have an idea of where the Spaniards and a lot of European colonizers went and took up residence. So that leads me into the last and actually one of the most prevalent in my background were just hella Vikings. I wrote hella Vikings because it was a ton, and then medieval Iberians. And so yeah, you'll see Norway, Denmark, Spain. So kind of makes sense. That is pretty much it. There, like I said, there was a ton that 23andMe was able to share with us and teach me about myself that I would have never known. Um, for anyone waiting, I did not find any surprise siblings yet. I don't know. I would be open to meeting any family members and stuff like that, but actually didn't have a whole lot of hits on my family tree. But I would be interested to see over time if other people get tested, if I find uncles, aunts, maybe a couple siblings here and there. And yeah, we'll see if I see any cool updates. Since 23andMe is constantly updating their database, I will definitely keep y'all posted, throw it up in a post or an additional video somewhere. I also plan on diving a little deeper into some parts of my ancestry that I've always wanted to know more about. Just because I grew up pretty sheltered, not with a whole lot of family, and I just want to get to know myself. I think that that'll be good for me. I do have a channel on my own that I keep saying I'm going to go back to. So if I do dive deep into my stuff, it'll probably be there, and I'll make sure to tag that. And speaking of ancestors, diverse backgrounds, and all the things, make sure you guys remember to know your rights, aclu.org. I will link it down below. You can also see it on the screen here. Stay safe out there. We love you. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, notifications, all the things. See you next time.
It's lagging. I'm leaving. See ya.